The night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that makes every sound feel louder than it should. A luxury car rolled to a stop on the side of a narrow road, its polished black surface reflecting the yellow glow of a single flickering streetlight. Beyond the road, the city thinned into darkness, empty fields on one side, unfinished concrete buildings on the other, half swallowed by shadow. Inside the car, the air was heavy. The pregnant woman sat in the passenger seat, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly, the other gripping the edge of her coat. The heater hummed softly, but she felt cold all the same. She turned toward her husband, confusion already tightening her chest. "Why are we stopping here?" she asked quietly. He didn't look at her at first. His fingers tapped the steering wheel, impatient, irritated, like someone delayed by an inconvenience. Finally, he sighed and glanced at her with eyes that held no warmth at all. "Hey guys. Before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss the full story. It's about to get intense." "Get out," he said flatly. The word didn't register right away. "What?" Her voice trembled. "It's late." "Where are we?" He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and checked the screen. "I'm picking someone up," he replied. "You're not coming." Her breath caught. "Someone, who?" He turned to her then, annoyance etched across his face. "My girlfriend," he said, as if stating the weather. "She doesn't like drama." "And you?" His eyes flicked briefly to her belly. "Our drama." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. "I'm your wife," she whispered. "I'm carrying your child." He opened the door, the cold night air rushing in like a slap. "Not my problem anymore," he said. "You wanted this baby. You deal with it." She stared at him, searching for a trace of the man she once loved, the man who promised to protect her, who once kissed her stomach and talked to the unborn child in the quiet hours of the night. But that man was gone. Her legs felt weak as she stepped out of the car. Gravel crunched beneath her shoes. Before she could say another word, he leaned across, yanked her bag from the back seat, and tossed it onto the road beside her. "Don't call me," he said, already shifting the car into gear. The door slammed shut. The engine roared. And just like that, the luxury car disappeared into the darkness, leaving her alone under the trembling streetlight, pregnant, abandoned, and shaking, with the echo of his cruelty still ringing in the air. She wrapped her arms around herself, fighting tears as the night pressed in from all sides, unaware that this lonely road was only the beginning, and that someone far more dangerous than her husband was about to cross her path. The gravel beneath her feet crunched softly as she stood there, frozen, staring at the taillights of the black luxury car as it vanished into the distance. Each red blink seemed to mock her, a cruel rhythm marking the end of everything she thought she had. The night was cold, sharper than the chill that gripped her chest, and the wind tugged at her coat, whispering through the empty road. She drew her arms tightly around herself, pressing one hand against the swell of her belly, as if holding on to the last piece of warmth and protection left in the world. Memory surged unbidden, slicing through the darkness like shards of glass. She remembered the first night in this city, how she had left her small village behind, bidding farewell to the only family she had ever known. The nights she spent working double shifts, the sacrifices she made to keep the apartment warm, the dinners she cooked quietly, the dreams she postponed, all for a husband who promised love, loyalty, and security. She had abandoned her own ambitions, her own friends, her own peace of mind for this marriage. And now, a sob escaped her lips, breaking the eerie silence. "How could you?" she whispered to the night, to the wind, to the empty road. The words hung there, fragile and tiny, swallowed almost immediately by the vast darkness around her. She had hoped he would see her sacrifice, hoped that the years of quiet dedication mattered. She had hoped love would protect her, shield her from this kind of cruelty. But hope, it seemed, was a luxury she could no longer afford. The faint hum of distant traffic reminded her that the city slept uneasily around her. Somewhere far away, neon signs flickered and reflected off puddles from an earlier rain, but none of it offered comfort, only the reminder that life continued for everyone else, while she stood abandoned, invisible. Her legs shook beneath her, exhaustion seeping into her bones. She sank onto a low stone wall at the edge of the road, clutching her bag like a lifeline. "I gave everything, and I'm left with nothing," she murmured, tears streaking her cheeks. Her voice was trembling but steady enough to hold the weight of despair and dignity at the same time. She pressed a hand over her belly, feeling the soft, tiny movements of the life inside her, the one constant she hadn't yet lost. As she sat there, shivering in the night, she realized that this wasn't the end. She would survive, because she had no choice, and because the child growing inside her deserved better than the cruelty she had endured. But little did she know, someone powerful and dangerous was already on his way, a presence that would change everything. The road was empty, the night silent, but the air was charged with anticipation, a storm brewing just beyond the shadows, waiting for its moment to arrive. The city lights blurred past as the black luxury car glided down the wide avenue, neon signs flickering against the tinted windows. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with smug satisfaction. The husband leaned back in his seat, one hand resting casually on the steering wheel, the other draped over the leather upholstery. His eyes gleamed with arrogance, a dangerous blend of pride and cruelty. Beside him, his girlfriend giggled, a sharp, high-pitched sound that cut through the quiet hum of the engine. "I can't believe you actually did it," she whispered, her tone dripping with delight. "You kicked her out, like she wasn't even there." He smirked, a slow, self-satisfied curve of his lips. "Of course," he said, his voice low but firm. "She had the nerve to complain, to cry, to act like she owns everything. And now, she's nothing. Just a shadow on a cold road, while he gestured broadly, his eyes sparkling with arrogance, we move forward." His words were venomous, but he seemed unaware, or uncaring, of how hollow they sounded to anyone who might have loved him. The girlfriend leaned closer, resting her hand lightly on his arm, her smile wide and conspiratorial. "You're amazing," she whispered, echoing his pride. "No one would have the guts to do what you just did." The husband chuckled, shaking his head, a sound that was more cruelty than amusement. "I'm not just anyone," he said. "I'm someone who gets what he wants. And tonight, I wanted freedom, excitement, pleasure. Not," he waved vaguely toward the darkness beyond the car, whatever she was clinging to. For a brief moment, his eyes flicked toward the rearview mirror, as if he might see the wife standing alone, shivering, heartbroken, abandoned. But the thought didn't stay. He dismissed it instantly, a laugh escaping his throat. "She'll survive, somehow. It's not my problem anymore." The girlfriend's laughter filled the car again, echoing against the smooth leather and glossy panels. "I love that about you," she said. "You never let anyone tie you down. You're fearless." And in that moment, the husband truly revealed himself, not as a protector, not as a partner, but as a man blinded by his own arrogance, convinced that the cruelty he inflicted was a display of strength. His moral compass had vanished, replaced by selfishness and hubris. Outside, the city passed in muted flashes of light, oblivious to the heartbreak he had caused. But somewhere beyond the comfort of his car, in the cold and quiet, the wife continued her lonely journey, a journey that would soon bring her face to face with a power far greater than him, a presence he could never ignore. The engine purred as they turned another corner, and the husband laughed again, unaware that the night was about to shift, and his true reckoning was approaching. The road ahead was barely illuminated, the flickering streetlights casting long, uneasy shadows across the cracked pavement. The pregnant wife's steps were slow, hesitant, each footfall crunching against scattered gravel as she pressed forward through the dimly lit industrial stretch. The air smelled faintly of damp concrete and oil, a metallic tang that made her stomach churn. She wrapped her coat tighter around her, though it did little to stave off the chill, and placed one hand protectively over her belly, feeling the tiny, restless movements of the child within. Her breaths came shallow and uneven, each exhale a visible puff in the cold night air. The city felt impossibly empty here, abandoned warehouses loomed on either side, windows shattered or boarded up, graffiti sprawled across walls like angry, chaotic signatures. Every sound, the distant wail of a siren, the clatter of a loose shutter, made her start, her heart hammering in her chest. She whispered to herself, trying to summon courage. "I'll be okay, just a little further," she murmured, her voice trembling. But even as she walked, exhaustion weighed heavily on her. Days of emotional torment, sleepless nights, and the betrayal she had endured pressed down on her like an invisible hand. Her shoes scuffed against the uneven ground, and she stumbled once, catching herself on a rusted fence. Then, through the darkness, a soft rumble reached her ears, a mechanical growl low and steady, like the warning of some predator. She froze. Ahead, barely visible in the faint glow of the streetlights, a black convoy emerged from the shadows. Sleek, powerful vehicles moved with silent precision, their polished surfaces swallowing the light. She could feel the weight of their presence before she even saw the drivers inside. Her pulse quickened. Who's there?" she whispered, voice shaking, more from fear than hope of an answer. The convoy didn't slow, it glided forward with calculated intent. She instinctively stepped back toward the edge of the cracked pavement, her coat fluttering in the sudden gust of wind, clutching her bag tightly as though it could shield her. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her body refused. The combination of pregnancy, fatigue, and the cold made her movements sluggish. She could only watch as the convoy drew closer, the black hoods gleaming in the sporadic light, their approach quiet yet impossibly menacing. Unseen eyes seemed to study her, measuring, evaluating, waiting. She took a shuddering breath, feeling the first spark of realization that this was no ordinary encounter. Something dangerous, something powerful, was coming toward her, something that would change the course of her night, and her life, forever. The road stretched endlessly, shadows dancing across her face as she braced herself, unaware that she was about to cross paths with a force far greater than the cruelty she had just escaped. The convoy rolled to a slow, deliberate stop, its sleek black vehicles forming a wall of shadow around the dimly lit road. From the lead car, the door opened with a soft hiss, and a figure stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a sharp black suit, the man moved with the calm authority of someone who had never known fear. At his side, a massive canine, a jet-black Belgian Malinois, shifted, its muscles coiled and alert, eyes glinting in the faint light like liquid steel. The dog's low growl vibrated through the air, a warning to anyone foolish enough to underestimate its master. The pregnant wife froze, her heart hammering violently in her chest. The night had already been cruel, but nothing had prepared her for this presence. The man's gaze swept over her slowly, deliberately, taking in the trembling figure, the hand resting protectively on her belly, the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. For a moment, there was silence. The hum of the city in the distance felt impossibly far away, muted by the sheer weight of his presence. She expected anger, intimidation, perhaps even cruelty, but instead, he simply stopped. He did not approach threateningly, did not bark orders. He merely watched. "You're pregnant," he said finally, his voice calm, measured, carrying an authority that demanded attention without raising it. There was no accusation in his tone, only recognition. His eyes, sharp as knives, softened slightly as he took a step closer, though the canine remained tense, a silent sentinel at his side. The pregnant wife swallowed hard, unsure whether to trust the stranger. I didn't," she started, but he raised a single hand to stop her. "You're alone," he observed, not unkindly, noting the raw vulnerability in her stance. "No one should be out here alone in this condition." The canine moved closer to him, brushing past his legs, muscles rippling under its glossy coat. Its eyes, like those of a seasoned soldier, never left her, yet it gave no indication of aggression toward her. Instead, the tension in the air shifted slightly, the weight of potential danger tempered by the unexpected mercy emanating from its master. For the first time that night, she allowed herself to breathe slowly, though her body still trembled with fear. She had endured betrayal, humiliation, and abandonment, but now, standing in the shadow of this mysterious figure and his canine, she realized that perhaps not all power was cruel. Perhaps some authority could be tempered by justice, by protection. The man's eyes lingered on her belly, then back to her face, as if silently measuring the world she had endured. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, almost to himself, yet with the force of a command. And with that, the air seemed to shift again, the night holding its breath, waiting for what was about to unfold next. The road was still, the city distant and oblivious, but in this small stretch of cracked pavement and flickering light, the balance of power had changed, and the next chapter of her life was about to begin. The night seemed to press in closer now, as if the city itself had fallen silent to witness what was about to unfold. The pregnant wife stood a few steps away from the Korean Mafia boss, the K9 at his side shifting restlessly, muscles coiled like a spring. Yet she did not falter. Each breath she drew was steady, measured, a quiet declaration that she would not crumble despite the weight of fear and betrayal that pressed against her chest. The boss's eyes, dark and calculating, fixed on her with a calm intensity. He said nothing at first, allowing the tension to stretch between them. Every second felt like a test, every subtle movement scrutinized. The streetlight flickered above, casting a staccato pattern of shadows across her face and the uneven pavement, emphasizing the exhaustion in her eyes and the tension in her posture. Finally, he spoke, voice low but commanding, cutting through the hum of distant traffic. "Why are you out here alone? Tell me everything." The words were simple, almost casual, yet they carried the weight of authority. She drew a slow breath, her lips trembling, but she did not beg. She did not embellish. Instead, she spoke plainly, her voice clear despite the cold gnawing at her bones. "My husband, he threw me out," she said, looking him directly in the eyes, refusing to shrink or hide. "I'm pregnant. I don't know where I am. I've given everything for him, everything. And he left me for another woman. He didn't care." "He didn't," her voice caught, but she swallowed the sob, steadying herself. "He didn't care about me at all." She paused, steadying her breath. The K9 shifted again, low growl rumbling, sensing the subtle tension between truth and deception. But she didn't flinch. She didn't plead for pity. She only stood there, raw and human, letting the truth speak for itself. The boss regarded her silently, his face a mask, yet something in the set of his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes, betrayed the recognition of honesty. She had passed the test, not through drama, not through exaggeration, but through dignity, restraint, and the courage to speak truth against injustice. "You speak plainly," he said finally, voice quiet, almost contemplative. "Good. Honesty has value. That will not be forgotten." The words hung in the air like a promise and a warning at once. The pregnant wife exhaled slowly, a small measure of relief washing over her, but she remained alert. Somewhere in the darkness, decisions were being made. And though she could not yet see them, the wheels of justice were beginning to turn, slowly, inevitably. The night remained still, the flickering streetlight casting long shadows, as the pregnant wife realized, this encounter was no mere chance. Something powerful and deliberate had arrived. And her life was about to change forever. The black convoy had grown still, almost imperceptibly, as if the night itself waited for the next move. The Korean Mafia boss stood in the center of the cracked pavement, the K9 at his side scanning the shadows with sharp, calculating eyes. Around them, his associates, dressed in dark suits and sleek leather shoes that made no sound against the uneven ground, formed a semicircle, silent and alert. Each one carried the quiet confidence of men who had long been trained to move in unison, to act without hesitation, to strike when necessary. The boss raised a hand, subtle and precise, and his voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Find him," he said. "Trace every move. Every call. Every corner he has ever dared to hide in. I want to know everything about him before he even realizes we're watching." The men nodded, disappearing into the shadows with the efficiency of predators on the hunt. The pregnant wife, standing a few feet away, watched in awe and trepidation, feeling the weight of their presence. She could see the K9's head tilt slightly, ears pricked, muscles taut as it studied the surrounding area. There was an intelligence there, a silent communication between dog and master that she didn't fully understand, but she felt the message clearly. This was power incarnate, and it had been roused. Minutes passed in near silence, the tension in the air almost tangible. The K9 moved closer to the boss, lowering its body, nose close to the ground. A low, guttural growl vibrated through the night, subtle yet unmistakable. Its tail twitched, eyes narrowing, and it let out a short, sharp bark that seemed to carry a warning more than a threat. Recognition. The man they hunted was no stranger. He had crossed powerful people before. The boss's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, almost imperceptible in the dim light. So, he murmured, more to himself than anyone else, he believes he can act without consequence. We'll see about that. His eyes swept over the assembled men, calm yet commanding. Double the surveillance. Every associate. Every transaction. Nothing escapes us. Not tonight. Not ever. As the associates melted into the city's darkened veins, the pregnant wife felt a shiver run down her spine. The inevitability of what was coming pressed upon her. The man who had thought he was untouchable, the man who had thrown her into the cold night, was now under scrutiny by forces he could not see and could not comprehend. The K9 returned to the boss's side, muscles relaxing slightly, but the growl never fully disappeared. A warning. A promise. Justice, sharp and silent, was on its way. And somewhere in the city, oblivious to the danger closing in, the husband continued in his arrogance, unaware that the night had already begun to turn against him. The darkness felt heavier now, charged with a quiet tension, as the wheels of fate started to move, slowly, deliberately, and with the inevitability of a storm that no one could outrun. The city square was alive with neon lights and the distant murmur of nightlife, but in one quiet corner, a storm of tension brewed. The husband stood beside his girlfriend, laughing nervously at a joke that barely landed, oblivious to the dark figures approaching from the shadows. He straightened his designer jacket, unaware that every step he took brought him closer to a reckoning he could not comprehend. Then, a shadow detached itself from the night. The Korean Mafia boss emerged first, calm and imposing, his black suit flawless, shoes silent on the concrete. Behind him, the K9 moved with deadly precision, muscles rippling, eyes locked on the husband as if it could read his very thoughts. The dog's low growl vibrated through the square, a sound that made the hair on the husband's neck stand on end. His laughter died in his throat. The color drained from his face as he finally noticed the pair approaching. What is this?" he stammered, trying to mask his fear with arrogance. But it faltered instantly when he saw the K9, perfectly trained, every inch a predator ready to strike. The boss stopped a few meters away, eyes fixed on him like cold steel. "You made a mistake," he said quietly, each word measured, deliberate. There was no need for shouting, the authority in his tone was enough to make the man shrink. The husband swallowed, voice trembling despite his attempts at bravado. I don't understand, you know exactly what you did," the boss said, taking a slow step forward. The K9's growl intensified slightly, muscles coiled, yet it remained obedient, an extension of the boss's will. The pregnant wife's abandonment, the arrogance, the betrayal, everything was laid bare in the quiet power radiating from this figure. The girlfriend clutched his arm, panic flashing in her eyes. Who are you?" she whispered, but the boss didn't answer her, his focus entirely on the man who had thought he could act without consequence. For the first time, the husband realized the magnitude of his miscalculation. The man before him was not merely a stranger. He was a force that commanded respect, obedience, and fear. And the K9, an extension of that force, made it unmistakably clear, resistance was futile. I didn't mean," he began, but the words were meaningless. His usual confidence, the arrogance that had fueled his cruelty, crumbled entirely under the weight of what stood before him. The city seemed to fade around them, neon lights blurring into insignificance. All that remained was the confrontation, the reversal of power, and the realization that justice had arrived. The pregnant wife, unseen by him, watched from a distance, a quiet sense of vindication rising in her chest. The man who had once seemed untouchable now trembled, and in that moment, the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. The night had turned against him, and there was no escape. The morning light spilled weakly over the city, pale and unforgiving, casting long shadows through the office towers where the husband had once felt untouchable. But now, those gleaming windows reflected nothing of his former power, only the hollow remnants of reputation stripped bare. His phone buzzed incessantly, emails piling up, each notification a hammer blow of reality, calls from colleagues, clients, and business partners, all severed, all terminated. The empire he had built on arrogance and betrayal was crumbling faster than he could comprehend. He sat at his mahogany desk, the papers scattered around him like confessions of guilt. The girlfriend who had once clung to his arm had vanished without a trace, leaving only a note filled with fury and disbelief. She had seen what he was, truly, and she had fled before the consequences could touch her. He crumpled the note, the edges cutting his palm lightly, a tiny sting that felt like poetic justice. A soft knock came at the door. His stomach twisted. "Come in," he croaked, voice trembling for the first time in years. The door opened, and the Korean Mafia boss stepped inside, calm as ever, the faint sound of the K9's nails clicking against the polished floor behind him. The husband's eyes widened. There would be no sudden attack, no dramatic explosion of violence, but the weight of power pressing down on him was heavier than any weapon could deliver. "You've made poor decisions," the boss said, voice measured, almost conversational. "Mistreating the innocent, betraying trust, believing you could act without consequence." He paused, letting each word hang in the air, thick and suffocating. "You will face the law, the courts, and the very people who once admired you. Every choice has a cost." The husband swallowed hard, throat dry, realizing that this calm, deliberate presence carried more force than any confrontation. The K9 stood silently at the boss's side, muscles relaxed but alert, a reminder of the silent, unstoppable power that had already set events into motion. "This isn't anger," the boss continued. "This is justice. Legal. Social. I won't need to raise a hand, your actions will undo you faster than any strike." He turned, nodding once to his silent associate, and left, the sound of his footsteps and the K9's nails fading into the hall. The husband sank into the chair, trembling, as the weight of inevitability pressed down on him. Career destroyed. Reputation shattered. Love and loyalty gone. And for the first time, he understood the meaning of accountability. He had wielded cruelty carelessly, and karma, silent, precise, unstoppable, had been delivered. Outside, the city carried on, unaware. But in that office, in that man's heart, the lesson had arrived in full: power misused, arrogance unchecked, and betrayal left unpunished would always return, with interest, in the most inevitable way. The morning sun broke gently over the skyline, casting golden light across the quiet streets. The pregnant wife stepped onto the balcony of her new apartment, the city sprawling endlessly before her. For the first time in weeks, she felt the warmth of safety and the faint stirrings of hope that had been buried beneath fear and heartbreak. The air smelled faintly of fresh bread from a nearby bakery and the distant hum of traffic, ordinary life, but it felt miraculous after everything she had endured. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, feeling the soft, rhythmic movements of the life growing within her. A small smile broke across her face, tentative but real. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to the child, her voice steady, carrying a quiet promise of protection and love. She had survived the cruelty of a man who should have cherished her, and now, against all odds, she had been given a second chance. From the street below, the faint sound of footsteps caught her attention. Her gaze dropped to see the black figure of the Korean Mafia boss standing a few meters away, his presence commanding yet calm. The K9 sat obediently by his side, ears perked, eyes scanning, but their tension was no longer threatening, it was protective. The boss's expression was unreadable, as always, yet there was an unmistakable nod toward her, a silent acknowledgement that he had ensured the scales of justice had balanced. "You're safe now," he said quietly, voice carrying across the small distance. There was no need for fanfare or dramatics, his calm authority was enough. "You've endured much. Now you can live without fear." The wife's lips quivered, a mixture of relief and gratitude rising within her. "Thank you," she said, voice soft but sincere. I don't know how to repay you. He shook his head slightly. You don't need to. Just live well. Protect the life you carry. That is enough. With that, he turned, the K9 following silently at his heel. Their figures receded into the early morning light, leaving her with the promise of safety and the power to rebuild. For the first time, she felt the weight of her chest ease, the heavy fog of fear lifting to reveal possibility. She leaned against the balcony railing, taking a deep breath of crisp, clean air. The city was alive with movement, but she moved at her own pace now, unhurried and unafraid. The past remained behind her, a shadow she had survived, but ahead lay a new life filled with hope, dignity, and quiet triumph. As the sunlight glinted on the glass and steel around her, she whispered to herself, almost in wonder, this is just the beginning. And with that, the world felt vast, full of promise, and entirely hers.